Growing your e-commerce business comes with plenty of hurdles, but shipping shouldn't be one of them. Well, here's some good news. Powerful e-commerce shipping software called ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes. With ShipExcel, you can generate discounted shipping labels for both online and offline orders. That saves time and money with everything right at your fingertips. Start your free trial of ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes today.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Hello, my name is Damon Friedman, co-founder and president of SOF Missions. As a 20-year veteran within Special Operations, I've gone through many challenges due to my military service and time in combat. We felt called to start SOF Missions to serve our fellow brothers and sisters in arms, focusing on suicide prevention and resiliency. Our mission at SOF Missions is to empower warriors to find purpose and be resilient. Since 2011, when we started the organization, almost 3 million men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the scars of war take a toll on their psychological, physical, social, and spiritual health. Many veterans feel a sense of hopelessness and a loss of purpose when they return to civilian life. They feel isolated and alone, unable to reconnect. And in the greatest of tragedies, over 20 veterans lose all hope and take their own lives. Our goal at SOF Missions is to provide veterans the tools and resources so that they don't become a statistic. We offer a unique approach to combating veteran suicide through a whole health, intradisciplinary model. The Be Resilient program is a 4-pillar methodology that addresses the areas of psychological, physical, social, and spiritual wellness. We provide care through 3 delivery methods: medical clinics, retreats, and educational training. Since we started back in 2011, we have been able to reach veterans in all 50 states and have served over 3,000 veterans through the Be Resilient program. Being resilient is a multifaceted and complex issue. We know that to find a lasting solution, we have to address the whole warrior. Many challenges cannot be solved by providing the treatments and modalities of just one component, but by tackling them all. Now, we've expanded our services to include law enforcement and first responders. Together, we can make a lasting impact in the lives of warriors across the nation. To learn more, visit our website at sofmissions.org.
For your post assignment, all units proceed to your post assignment.
All right. Welcome back.
MisFitNation, the MisFitNation show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience need to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the MisFitNation show, the Sunday after dinner show. Thanks for your patience. We had some technical difficulties, and we are all here tonight. We're all ready to rock and roll. Before we start tonight, I want to pay respects to Deputy Sheriff Brandon Sykes of the Columbia County Sheriff's Office in Georgia, and to watch Saturday, April 26th, 2025. Keep his friends, his family, his peers in your thoughts and prayers as they go through this tough time. It's a job we know is risky, but it's a job they raised their hands to do, and we have to support them when they go through these hard times. So let's give our support to them as they do that. Tonight we have a great guest. She's an author. She has, of course, this is the first thing that popped out to me. She has 2 Great Pyrenees, 2 Dachshunds, and a halfling or horse, and 3 cats on 90 acres northwest of Laurel, Montana, in a secluded box canyon lined with ponderosa pine trees. She's a long way from the town. She grew up in Oklahoma, but now she's settled in Montana, and she's doing great things. So without further ado, let's welcome AJ Otjen to the MisFitNation show. Welcome, AJ.
Well, thanks for that introduction. I'm hoping my dogs don't start barking as we do this show. I've been trying to keep them quiet as we started.
All right.
Sorry for the late start. I was pushing all the buttons. I thought I was pushing all the right buttons, and I was on for a long time, and I finally but we finally connected. So thanks for having me.
It's awesome. It's great to have you here. AJ, I gave a very brief introduction of you. If you don't mind, give us a little more about you, as far back as you want to go to how we got here.
Well, I was in the corporate world for 25 years in Colorado and Missouri. And then I got my MBA and my PhD in night school, working full time. So I was tuckered out and retired from the corporate world, and was offered this job in Montana at Montana State University, and was able to head west with my animals, and have been here for almost 25 years. So split my career in half, corporate world and academic, and sort of living in a movie out here in Montana as a professor with my animals and the mountains, and have been able to become a writer. I mean, I've been an academic writer for as a professor, but I turned to creative writing about almost 10 years ago as well. And that's been a real joy to me to be able to write creatively as well. And that's how I got into this book with Dan Steffensen and his traumatic experience. It's the first nonfiction book I've written. And it's been a very important part of my life the last almost 3 years now, working with Dan to get his story captured in the story of Red Lodge, Montana, the town that he was, that this amazing summer, the summer of hell, as they called it, happened in 2021, was when he was burned over, but they had several tragedies happen that summer. So to capture that summer for them was a very important thing to do, and a very emotional time. And it was very difficult to make sure I got it right. They all were counting on me to get it right. So a lot of pressure. Anyway.
Definitely. And just thinking of that book, Burned Over, the story of Dan Steffensen, as he was burnt over 60% of his body at 3rd-degree burns. That's horror. That's a lot.
Yes.
Not many people live through that, actually. So that's pretty horrendous.
He wasn't supposed to. No,
right.
But they thought he was going to die that night. Yeah, they got him. He was flown to Utah, the best burn center in the country. Really, they flew him out that night, and they didn't think he was going to live to get to the hospital in Billings, Montana. But he did. He did. He didn't even think he was hurt. Thing about burn survivors is, their nerves are all burnt. And so they don't feel any pain, and they are called the walking dead because everything's shutting down. All their organs are shutting down inside, and they don't realize they're hurt. So he was just saying, I'm fine. I think I can go home. And they were trying to calm him down and get him, put him out so they could airlift him to Utah. Then there's a whole part of the book that talks about the honor guard. There's an honor guard in Utah that they meet the plane of the burn victims coming in, and they stand over them from shiny from cover to shoes in full dress uniform until they die. But in this case, Dan didn't die. He kept on fighting because he's such a tough guy. And the town needed him to live and come home because there were so many tragedies happening that summer that they needed him to live and come home. And it took months, but he did, thank God. And that's part of the reason he's so inspiring, is that he came home to a town that needed him to come home. Yeah.
Wow.
So.
And you met him after the fire, obviously, and how many sessions did you have with him sitting down? And I'm sure it was hard for him.
Well, we got together. Well, we live about an hour apart. We met, my students were doing a marketing campaign for raising money for personal protective equipment, which is what he was wearing when he was burned over, or he would not have survived. And so he was the star of our TV campaign. So he said, help us raise money so that all firefighters can have this equipment so they also can survive. And so I met him on that shoot, and that was a year after he was burned. And we kept in touch after that, and he saw some of the books I had written, and he said, would you write my book? Whoa, okay, I'll give it my best shot. And it was a volunteer. It was all volunteer because you have to, the firefighters basically are used, it's an all volunteer situation when you're working with our local firefighters. But it took 3 years, and I worked with him. I mean, we talked 2 or 3 times a week. We got together probably once a week. And there's a little cafe halfway between Laurel and Red Lodge. He was in Red Lodge and I was in Laurel. We'd meet at this little cafe halfway between at least once a week. But, Dan's actually in a coma for a third of the book. So most of my research was interviewing other people, doctors and firefighters and first responders and his family, to find out what they were experiencing, the citizens of Red Lodge, because the book became so much more about them than him. And he originally wanted it to be a fire book. And we butted heads a lot because, as an academic, I originally started researching fire and burns, and it became very technical. And I thought, my God, this is really boring. And I said, Dan, I've got to understand the human element of this book, and which was not what he wanted, because he does not share his feelings. He's a very, very unemotional, unfeeling guy. He's a tough guy, and so to pull that out of him took a lot. And he called, in fact, I talk about this in the book, he called it like Cartman in South Park. Wow. I guess one episode had some aliens sticking a probe in him, and he said, I felt like Cartman in South Park. Somebody was a bunch of aliens were sticking a probe in me and opening me up. And I went, well, I guess that's kind of what it was. But yeah, anyway, so it was very difficult for him to go through this process. I mean, there were a lot of tears involved in writing this book to get him to talk about what it felt like. I mean, to understand what recovery was like for a burn survivor. Maybe 60% of his body was burned, but used the other 40% for skin grafts. So it's 100% of his body had to go through this process. And surviving burns is horrible for the rest of your life. I mean, because you have to maintain your scars. They don't bend. They don't stretch. They don't have moisture. So it's a constant maintenance process when you have scars like that. And it was an emotional and mental recovery as well for a guy who does not like to take stock of his life, And we talk a lot about that in the book. He had lost his significant other a year before, so he was already very grumpy. And then this happened, and then and he had a lot to overcome, and his family was pretty much estranged from him. So they all met in Utah while he was in a coma with one purpose, and that was to save him. So they all came back together in this process. So a lot of this book is about family and community and love, and trying to capture that love and put it on the page was what I wanted to do. and I'd never done that in a nonfiction way before. So had to take a lot of creative license to accomplish it and get that done. So
I'm sure. I mean, it's hard to flip the switch from academic writing and then go into a true life story, like
narrative,
basically an interview process.
yeah, and narrative nonfiction, yeah. It's a narrative nonfiction, but a lot of journalism sort of intrudes upon the style because I have so many direct quotes from the people who were there. And every interview I did, we had tears. I mean, nobody could remember this event without crying. It was a very emotional, process to capture the story and get it on the page. But we got it done. And everybody says that, they read, it's a quick read, but you have to stop and cry every once in a while because it's a very emotional thing to read. And there's some humor in it because, things like Dan was, when Dan was in the hospital and going on the ambulance, Marla the EMT was trying to get her to take off his boots, and she was going to cut him off. And he's like, hell no, these things cost me $500, So there's a lot of moments when people, where you actually have to smile a little bit. So
I give a little
knowing that he lived,
right.
Yeah.
Knowing
that he lived, you can see. Yeah. Right. Then you can look back and say, yeah, that's funny that he, wouldn't let them take his boots off because they cost too much money.
Yeah,
so
we weren't sure if he was going to be here with you tonight or not, since it was kind of,
well, the reason he can't do podcasts anymore. And I can tell you why. A year ago, he actually fought back to be on the fire line by 2023, which was a year ahead of schedule. And then in 2024, he was diagnosed with small cell lung cancer, not related to the burn. So, so he started chemo, and then he that worked for a while, but he's had a relapse. So he is not doing podcasts anymore. He's basically relapsed, and he's doing fine. He's happy. He's got people who care for him, and he's living in his home of Montana. And he wants, if there's any message from Dan at this point in time, it's to live your life to the fullest and be happy for him because he's had a great life.
Oh, that's awesome. He has a great attitude about it, and a lot of people would just give up in that situation, especially with as much 60% of his body burnt at that point, and then going through getting burnt is one thing. Then after going through the surgeries, the grafts, and all that to try to get it close to livable, that's probably even worse than the initial burn. And then each time they got to do something, it makes it even harder to come back. So to have that wherewithal and the resilience and grit to go through that and just deal with it, that's a testament to him.
It was hard for At first he did not. I mean, there's a whole chapter called "Let Me Die." When he woke up, he did not want to live. It was just so painful. It was terrible. And he had long talks with God and said, why I want to die? Just let me die. This hurts too badly. But it was the other burn survivors who I met and interviewed who they have a saying, between the past and the future is acceptance. And he did not accept it for a very long time. And but when he saw them, as he says, they can tell me all day long, but until you see it, you just can't accept it. But when he saw them, and many of them are amputees from being burned so badly, and he had his hands. I mean, it took him months to go from lifting a 2-pound weight to a 5-pound weight because his hands were so badly burned. But when he saw them who didn't even have any fingers, he thought, well, heck, if they can do it, then I can do it. And so seeing them and seeing their attitude is what changed him. So. And that's why he says today, he says, I've lived a great life. I've never been afraid to die. I wasn't when I was burned, and I'm not now. So don't anybody feel sorry for me or pity me because of my current condition. And he would cut your head off if he thought anybody was feeling sorry for him right now. Even though he's basically relapsed and small cell lung cancer is terminal, and that's why he's no longer doing podcasts. But his message now is to be happy that he's had a great life. So
that's amazing. We have a question from
I'm here to carry on his story.
That's outstanding. I'm glad that you're here to do this. We have a question from the audience from @SpanContra. AJ, what was the most difficult part of writing this Burnt Over and telling Dan's story? thanks to Panic Country?
Well, in the beginning, it was that I didn't know. I mean, I knew about what it was like to live in Montana because I've lived here for 25 years, and so I do know what fire season is like. But I did not know the technical nature of fire, which I wanted to write about that. I wanted to understand how Dan got there because he's a senior firefighter, very well trained firefighter, and everybody wanted to know, well, how did he get in the position of being burned as a trained firefighter? So starting out with all the technical aspects of it was one thing, but the hardest part was getting through the emotional aspects of it for everybody involved, because I became so emotionally involved myself, and to try to capture that and deal with the emotions myself and still put it on the page and then have a structure that I thought readers could get through it and follow a story. And it became extremely difficult for me to do that, and make it a story that flowed, knowing how emotional it was, because I was so emotionally involved at the same time. Yeah.
I'm sure it's hard not to get emotionally involved when you're sitting with him and talking about that, and you've actually witnessed the fire from about as far away as you were from that in Montana. So you watched it on TV or got to smell the smoke and got to see everything.
No, I mean, I have property. My place has been on fire before. So,
Wow.
Anybody who lives in Montana is closely associated with fire. We all have experienced fire. So it's not that difficult to write about fire. And the nature of fire, because we've all experienced it, but to do the research and explain why fire acts the way it does, or then how firefighters are trained and how they put it out. That was actually became very interesting to me, and I wanted to get that on the page to help people understand it from a technical point of view as well. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure people reading this, they're gonna envision the fire, they can envision everything, they're gonna see all the recent fires, especially in Los Angeles, and all the California fires you see on TV.
Well,
you never see Montana fires really. So.
Well, and it's all about wind. California was about wind, and what got Dan was wind. The wind was invisible ahead of a storm, and nobody knew it was coming. Nobody knew it was there until it came and hit Dan. I mean, The National Weather Service had not forecasted it. The helicopter in the sky did not see it coming. The incident commander did not see it coming. Nobody saw it coming until it was boom, right on top of Dan. Wind is everything when it comes to fire, just like in California. And I talk about Cal Fire in the book because there was no honor guard in Utah until they had a horrible situation of one of their own fighting fires in California. And when one of their own died in California, Cal Fire is who stepped up, and their honor guard got them home to Utah. And as a result of that, then Utah developed their own honor guard, especially with the burn center in Utah. So now Utah has a world-class honor guard of their own that meets every plane. And I write about that in the book, because when you understand the brotherhood of firefighters, heck, I wanted to join the family of firefighters. It's unbelievable how close these people are. And the town of Red Lodge is another thing that I write about in the book, because it sits on the edge of Yellowstone National Park, right on the edge. So it's surrounded by forest and grass. And that whole town is always on alert. Everybody who lives in that town is either a member of the fire department or has family who's a member of the fire department. They all know each other's names. They all live on alert. They're all trained to be ready for fire. So they all knew Dan, and they were all praying for Dan. It was, the town itself is something that you've just got to fall in love with. And the people there, you've got to fall in love with them, because they are a town of first responders. And and they're a town of firefighter families. Yeah. That's why they became such an essential part of the story. The town itself did. Yeah.
That's amazing. And how many people from the town did you get to sit down and talk to as well?
Oh, at least, the entire fire department, and then many of the people who were related to them. But I think I wrote a line that said, the mortality basically was parked on the main street of town like a car that needed to be towed away. Not mortality, but something. Yeah, more. Yeah, that's wow. And it was just so sad. The whole summer was so sad.
I bet.
Because first of all, fire season started very early. Something called the Robertson Jaw Fire came and started just on the other side of Mount Maurice, and then came over Mount Maurice and almost burned down the town. Mount Maurice is right, and Mount Maurice to this day is bald because the fire came right over the mountain, burned down the forest, and came right to the edge of town. And they were ready to evacuate Red Lodge because it was so fierce. That was the first big tragedy. And then a hiker from Montana State, one that was very skilled, went up and got lost, and they searched for her all summer. Search and rescue went out and searched for her all summer long. And they finally found her remains at the end of summer. And then Dan got burned over. And then another firefighter who was incredibly skilled, incredibly talented. He was a snowboard instructor. Red Lodge also has a ski mountain. He was a snowboard instructor on the mountain. He fell on his skateboard and hit his head, and he was in life support for a long time. And then finally they took him off life support because he was brain dead. So all of this was happening at once, and it was like, what? How much worse can it get in Red Lodge, right? It was just a horrible summer for a very small town.
And everything's stacked up on it. Wow,
a town that looks like it came out of a Western movie. I mean, the Main Street of town is just a bunch of antique shops. It's perfect for a Western movie set. In fact, Jeremiah Johnson was once the constable of Red Lodge. If that gives you a kind of an idea of what it looks like.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So it's a small town, a small Western town, USA.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the towns they showed in 1923, I guess, when they're moving to the Yellowstone and stuff at first. So, the small towns that they were camping in, basically. So, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for you moving from Oklahoma to there, how big was the adjustment going from Oklahoma to there?
Well, it wasn't huge. I mean, I've always Oklahoma is oil and cattle. So is Montana. So I was raised with horses, and I skied. I mean, when I left the corporate world, I wanted to move west because I had horses and I wanted to ski. So Montana. So I sent my resume to college towns where I could ski and bring my horses. So that wasn't a huge adjustment for me. And I had acreage in Missouri in my last corporate job. So I wanted acreage for my horses. So basically I got what I wanted, and it wasn't that big of an adjustment. And I had lived in Colorado before, so I liked mountains and skiing. So, this is pretty much the life I've worked my entire life to have. And you can probably, I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have a log home, and my acreage is, is like, I think you said it's surrounded by, it's all ponderosa pine trees, and it's gorgeous. So I've never had to make an adjustment except to kind of breathe it all in and think, my gosh, how did you get here? Who lives like this? Oh, I do. Okay. So no, I've been very lucky to, I mean, it's not a grand life. It's just a lovely, quiet life, where I go into campus a couple of days, a few days a week. But more and more students are demanding online learning. Fortunately, I'm hooked up with the satellite here, so that works for me too. So, and I spend a lot of my time writing now. So that's, I teach and write. So, but I was, going to Red Lodge a lot when I was writing this book, so, which is just an hour away. Anyway,
not a bad life to have if we just write and teach. So
no, when you think about it, I'm just an hour away from the gateway of Yellowstone Park. So you can imagine the country I live in. So yeah.
So it's a beautiful country there. We got another question from the audience. At Beverly Road 456, how did community support and brotherhood help during Dan's recovery journey? Thanks, Beverly Road.
It was well, I'm not sure he would have recovered without it, frankly. Dan was going crazy. When he woke up in the coma, he was going crazy. First of all, he was never left alone in Utah. His family was there. Firefighters were coming there. So somebody was always sitting with him in his room during the coma. And then when he woke up from the coma, somebody was always with him. And Dan does not sit still. And so for him to be in gauze from head to toe, and there's pictures in the book And if you buy Audible, there's a PDF attached that has the pictures. They show him, from head to toe wrapped in gauze, and he stayed that way for months because the burns were, to prevent infection. And also, by the way, he was on rheumatoid arthritis. He was 65 years old, so there was no way he was going to live because the rheumatoid arthritis medication weakens your immune system. And he did die 3 times while he was in the coma, but they kept bringing him back, with the defibrillators. But what happened was, because it's a town of first responders, and his brother also was there, and his brother learned how to do debriding and wound care, and the town had PT people. They all said, bring him home. We'll finish his wound care. We'll finish his PT. We'll take care of him because we know he's going crazy. So he got to go home early because the town said, we'll finish the job. And they did. I mean, he had to pass one last test, which is being able to swallow. He had, he'd had a feeding tube in his mouth, in his throat for so long. And then he had lots of stuff in his throat. Anyway, once he could swallow again, it took him forever. He had to do all this exercise to learn how to swallow again. That was the last test he had to pass. Once he could swallow again, then he could leave Utah. And so he left Utah about 3 months early and went home to Red Lodge because the town said they would take care of him. And that's what happened. And so without that, I'm not sure he would have done well. And he was 160 pounds when he went home. And after being fed everybody fed him, everybody took him to the doctor. He was up to 220 pounds not long after he got home. So, as his neighbor said, his immediate neighbors, by the way, were a doctor and a PT, and they said he likes his carbs. So they kept feeding him when he got home. So he was happy to be able to swallow again. Let's put it that way. And he walked and walked. I remember, I was working on the book. He wanted to be able to pass a pack test, which is what firefighters do. It's 3 miles with 45-pound pack in 45 minutes. That's the pack test to be a wildland firefighter. I got a text one time. It said 43:10. And what is that? That was his time on the pack test, which meant he was now qualified to be a firefighter again. But the next week he was going back to Utah for more skin grafts. So he says, I was bleeding like a stuck pig, but I still passed my pack test. The next week he went back to Utah for more skin grafts, and yet he had qualified to be. That's how tough this guy is. He was still, and he's 65. And then he was 67 years old then. But so he was qualified to be a firefighter. And he was back on the line in 2023, 2 years later. It's supposed to take him 3 years to recover, and he did it in 2 years, which is good because in 2024, he was, back, he was doing chemo for his lung cancer. And so he couldn't do it anymore after that. So
he definitely is a hard as nails guy. And he is the
yes,
guy
yes.
you think woodland firefighter. So that's amazing.
I talked to, when he was in the beginning, he had the grumpy old man syndrome, which is what firefighters are when they're not fighting fires. And then the workman's comp guy called him a tough son of a bitch because, the workman's comp guy was paying all the bills, and he saw the surgeries he was going through. He said, this guy must be some tough son of a bitch. And then when he was going through wound care, the nurses said he was a stubborn old fool. So I said, well, he went through 3 syndromes. He was a grumpy old man, and he was a tough son of a bitch, and then he was a stubborn old fool. And I said he has all 3 of those things, but all of them were required for him to survive this ordeal. But that's really who he is. And he'll be the first one to say that he uses a different word, but he's basically a jerk, and he says, I am who I am, take me or leave me. That's who he is. And, but that's how he survived.
Wow. Yeah. It's a shame that
but that's who I work. But that's who I worked with for 2.5 years to get this book written. So when you say what was the hardest part about writing the book, probably working with him. So,
oh wow.
Yeah. He'll be the first one to say, I am who I am, take me or leave me. Yeah.
Do you think it would have been an awesome thing for you to maybe meet him before all this happened, or is it better that you met him after and seen the fight in him after?
Oh, I think it's better that I met him afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, and also, and then gotten to know him through everybody else's eyes, because everybody else really appreciated him, thought considered him part of the fabric of the fire department. He was a mentor to so many of the young firefighters. Getting to know him through so many of other people's eyes in the community gave me a complete blank canvas to start with. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
One of our hosts from Tuesday night, Jake, his wife said, if you need a roommate, she'll come out and bring her own horses.
Actually, that would be great. Because my horse was actually, I had an accident about 4 years ago and broke my leg. So I was not riding my horse, and I sent him off to be he was doing equine therapy for veterans at this place just about 30 minutes from here. Well, he ended up going lame. He's gotten older and he's lame, and they sent him back to me. So he's back home, and he seems so lonely. So I'm trying my best to keep him stimulated and active, but I keep thinking I need another horse out here to, another retired horse to keep him happy. So,
wow.
Anyway, it'd be a bad idea to have somebody come bring a horse out. Yeah.
All right, Mickey, get on the road and bring your horses out there. So she'll be happy to do it. She loves horses. She loves animals, and she'd love the mountains too.
Yeah.
So.
The dogs are doing their best. I have noticed though that there's a lot of turkey. The horse is just down the hill about 200 yards, and I'm keeping him in this corral right now because if he was out eating grass, he'd be getting fat and too fat, if you know what I mean. So
right.
I'm trying to keep him from getting too fat. So I noticed that there's a lot of turkey down there, and the turkey seem to be keeping him company, and he likes them. So, and there's deer. So I think the wildlife is keeping him company pretty well. So anyway,
I mean, that's great. And as you write, you get to look at all that stuff. So you have an open canvas basically when you do creative writing, looking out your window.
Yeah, you can see the windows behind me. I do look out the windows this is my office, as you can see. And yeah.
It's beautiful.
There's a fireplace. There's a fireplace there, and
Got another question from the audience from Sam College, spelled with a K. What message do you want young firefighters or anyone facing trauma to take away from the experience Dan had?
There's a couple of things there. We had a couple of goals in writing this book. To begin with, Dan wanted to say thank you to all the people who saved him. And let me reiterate that, because there were probably thousands of people who stepped up to greatness. These are all good people, but they were stepped up to greatness in this endeavor. And the truth is, first responders, firefighters in general, or doctors, they do this every day, and they don't get a lot of recognition. What it takes to have somebody like Dan survive and come back home is all of this, all these people and the work they do every day, the miracles they make happen every day. And I tried to recognize them in this book. And I hope that they feel like they were respected and recognized, and people see, oh my God. And I have had a couple of friends call me and say, now that I've read this book, every time I see a fire engine go by, I have a much greater appreciation for what they do. And I'm hoping that that's what happens as a result of this book, because these people do not get the recognition they deserve for what they do every day, every day, to make miracles happen, to bring people like Dan back home. That's one. The other thing is, what Dan never did and finally did in the end was to ask for help. And firefighters are the worst, and first responders in general are the worst at asking for help, because they have to be so tough. And we talk about that in the book a lot. If Dan hadn't met the other burn survivors who had learned how to ask for help, he never would have asked for help. because they're so tough. And the other firefighters were hurting because, they were just so traumatized by what had happened to Dan that they had to learn how. The Red Lodge community and the other firefighters, they had to ask for help to heal as well. And in fact, firefighter organizations across the country now talk about the overall balance of the human being, not just the physical well-being, but the mental and emotional well-being of how to be a well-balanced person to do a good job. So asking for help is critical, and to focus on what the burn survivors motto is between the past and the future is acceptance. Those are all very important, messages that we wanted to get through in this book, because, all that happened because of family and community and acceptance. Nobody actually healed. The community, Dan, they all have scars that will last a lifetime, but they learn that they can survive very bad things. And that knowledge in itself is a very big thing. And they learned how to survive by asking for help, by leaning on each other, by knowing that family and community is everything. And many of them actually also learn that they have a God that they can talk to. So there's a lot of lessons in this book that help them survive, help them understand what was important in life, and to recognize that first responders are so critical and are heroes every day of their life. So I'm hoping that that's a good answer. It's a long answer. It's a long answer to the question, but yeah.
That was a very good answer.
Firefighter families go through so much and never get the recognition that they deserve. So
I think all first responders have that same mantra.
Yes.
They'll give all for others, all for those who they work for or they're sworn to protect, and they don't expect a lot back. But in the end, it's them who really need the help. All of them, police, firemen, EMTs.
Right. That's right. Yes, that's right.
That's why at the beginning of our show,
and you put veterans in there, and veterans are in the same veterans as well. And I come from an Army family, so veterans are the same way. Every man in my family has fought in combat. So
wow,
yeah.
And they're the same hard-headed too. They won't ask for help, and that's a big problem with our veterans. Veterans first responders, that we all can help ourselves. We don't need help, and it's starting to change a little bit, but it's still
well. That's the mentality. They think they're the ones who are supposed to be helping, but they won't ask for help because they're trained to help. Right. That's the problem. Yeah. And we talk about that in this book a lot. Yeah. And it's actually, but it's still a very quick read. I mean, it's yeah. So
hopefully the audience will pick it up. It's on your website. I know that at ajotjen.com.
Mm-hmm. It's also under books and then Burned Over. It's a Kindle and an Audible and a print. Right. It's in on Amazon. So So I'm hoping
all the links are right there on your website. I'm looking at them right now, and the cover of the book. The cover of the book is a pretty awesome picture. We do have.
Oh, that picture is interesting because that picture is actually of the Red Lodge Fire Rescue Team, and on the side on the edge of the book, that's actually Dan pictured on the.
Oh wow!
On the, what do you call that? Yeah.
On the cover.
That was a fire in Wyoming. Yeah, that was a fire in Wyoming. Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's engine. That's E77 the engine. Yeah. We talk about the engines a lot in the book. E78, E77. Yeah. Dan burned over the burned over engine that Dan was in is E78, and the end of the book is kind of makes you tear up. E78. There's a new E78 in the end of the book that I was inspired by the picture of the new E78 that Dan sent me when he was fighting fires in Western Montana. And he sent me a picture and said, look, here's the new E78. I went, okay, that's cool. And that inspired me for the last page of the book, and made me cry. I sent it to Dan. He said, that made me cry. I said, yeah, me too. So every once in a while, I imagined a little scene for a little creative license in the book that made sense to me to kind of wrap it up. So, Yeah. I made characters out of the engines. I make out of radio frequencies, out of the National Weather Service, out of the storms. I tried to make little characters every once in a while out of all the important players in the book, so yeah.
We got another question from the audience. I'm sure you did. At Mary E. Liz has, how can the listeners support first responders and spread awareness about the risks they face? Thanks, Mary E. Liz has.
Well, geez, I think being aware yourself, I think, is one thing. And then every time there's a fundraiser, give money, because, most of them are, I think 70 or 80% are volunteers. And there's always a need for more money, because a lot of them go out there in blue jeans. One of the reasons we were having a fundraiser here for personal protective equipment, or the Nomax that they need to wear, was because they'll go out there and fight fires in blue jeans, which means that they'll just burn right up if they get burned over. Have fundraisers, raise fundraisers, or raise money. I don't know. Any chance you get to talk about them, I think, or go to a fire station and take them a cake or some soda for free. I think is get involved in your local community. Anything like that. It's very local. Everything's local.
I know here what we did. We have a Jeep crew here. It's pretty big Jeep crew. We drove to every fire station as a group and dropped off stuff to each fire and EMS station and some police stations along the way, just to show appreciation to them. Yeah. You can do that. That'll just make their day, to let them know what they're doing actually matters. And it's not just they're not.
I remember we had a big fire on top of my canyon, and they spent days putting that out. And I was so grateful. I went by and I dropped off probably 3 cases. I hated to drop off beer, but I had 3 cases of Coke and water and a big cake and some ice cream. And I just said, thank you for saving my ass. I try to do that periodically. So,
and every little thing like that.
The ad campaign that my students did, we did that for free. Just anything you can think of, I suppose. That's think of them as a nonprofit, a volunteer group. They always need money.
Definitely. Where I am now here, we rely on the volunteers in this part of the county. Just about 4 blocks away, less than 2 miles away, really, is where the city starts. So we're just outside the city limits. So we have just county fire.
And the other thing to remember is that, their families are almost always forgotten about and left behind. I'll tell you one thing. When Dan was burned over, they started a GoFundMe account for him. And within about 3 weeks, they raised over $100,000 for him.
Wow.
So he came home to a fund that helped him a lot. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's great community support and external community support, our community support. So
the money came from all over the world. And plus they were sending T-shirts. Somebody spread the word that he collected firefighter T-shirts. He actually only collected them from the fires that he had been on, but he got T-shirts from Nova Scotia. So, yeah.
So everyone knew, and the whole family, really, they're just one giant family with different accents.
Yes, that's true. Well, and I would say, I dedicated the book to Red Lodge Fire Rescue, the town of Red Lodge, and the Utah Fire Authority, and the Burn Center, the Utah Burn Center, which is a part of the Utah University Health Center. All of those groups, if you want to support the Utah Burn Center or the Utah Fire Authority, I'm telling you that the honor guard of the Utah Fire Authority is amazing. So that's another, if either support your local area, or if you want to support something more national, then I highly recommend the Utah Fire Authority, because what their honor guard does is just beyond amazing. If you read my book, you will see what the Utah Fire Authority Honor Guard does for people who fly in all from across the country.
Wow.
They just they break your heart. You'll cry at that part of the book. You definitely will.
That's a lot of crying in this book. I don't know. Those of you.
Well, there is. You have to stop. People have told me it's a quick read, except for when they have to stop and collect their emotions. That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So AJ, thanks for getting on tonight. We're almost at the end of our allotted time. So how do people get in contact with you? Is your website the best way to get in contact with you, or is something else?
I think so. And I think my email is on there as well. It's ajotjen@gmail.com. Mm-hmm.
So I have the website going across the bottom. I've put it into the chat too. So those of you watching,
ajotjen.com, right? That's my website. And the email is ajotjen@gmail.com. That's me.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
And before we let you go, we ask our guests, all of our guests, before we let them go, what's 3 things the Misfit Nation can start doing tomorrow to make them better humans?
What can Misfit Nation do to make people better?
The audience, yes.
What can the
audience do? Start doing tomorrow. 3 things that can make them better people, better humans.
Oh, good. Wow. From my experience in my lifetime, I'll tell you what I tell my students. I tell my students to not freak out, to not stress out. That's one of the things I leave them with as they grad, because this is the end of the semester, and I've noticed, they're always freaking out and stressing out. And I say, if I've learned anything, and because I'm about to retire, I say, as I'm about to end my career, I look back and I think of all the times I've stressed out and freaked out, I've realized that none of it was ever necessary. So don't stress out, don't freak out. None of that's ever necessary. That would be one thing. Because there's nothing ever comes from any good from stressing out or freaking out, or, so that would be one thing. Second thing, to be a better human. Well, I would say, I believe in critical thinking. That's the other thing I teach my students. Critical thinking is something where you always look for evidence. You research for evidence before you form your opinions. That would make you a better person. Don't just, go by what you see or hear, or, whatever on social media. Seek out evidence and be a critical thinker in life. That's the other thing I tell my students. And third, I would always say, I try to say, as a writer, I tell people to fall in love with your subject matter. And I would tell people, as you go through life, try to fall in love with what's ever important to you. Fall in love with everything that's important to you. Fall in love with it. It'll make you do a better job.
Outstanding. AJ, again, thank you for hanging out with us.
Those are my 3 things. Yeah.
That's all in the chat. The audience has it. They can't say they didn't see it. It's on every social media right now. It's in the chat with YouTube. It'll be there forever. It won't go away. AJ, but thank you again for coming on tonight.
All right. Well, I ask me again in a year and see if I say the same thing. That'll be interesting.
Definitely. So you have a great night, AJ, and Misfit Nation. We'll see you on Tuesday night.
Well, thank you for being patient and waiting for me to get on. I appreciate it.
No problem. I gave you the.
Thank you. It was fun. Yeah.
Have a good one.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.